From sunrise to sunset, recycling is more than a job. It's a way of life. Early mornings, late nights, hard work that turns the old into something new. Recyclers power the economy, and ReMatter is built to power you. Making those long days easier with smarter tools like scale ticketing, payments, dispatch, and everything in between. We bring it all together so you can focus on what matters most, growing your business and serving your community. Driven by the spirit of recyclers everywhere. ReMatter. Built for recycling. Built for you.
Anyway, thanks for joining. Have a seat. Again, my name is Mark Valdez-DePena. I've been in scrap metal software for just shy of 30 years. I'm with the AMCS Group. We are a solution provider to the waste and recycling industries, an enterprise management solution. So our group, the group I'm from, we've got 40 years of experience. We've got about 275 metal recycling companies that in 3 different continents. And in the U.S., 7 of the top 10 metal recyclers are running one of our solutions. So this is what I want to talk to you about today. What if your yard operations and your financial operations could be more tightly bound, work more closely together? If you could know exactly where your transportation dollars are going, particularly into what commodities, through what suppliers, and what if you knew the entire bunch of costs that went into your finished goods, particularly the dollars, not just purchasing material, not just the landed cost of material, but things like disposal costs and conversion costs. If you could have a better understanding, an immediate understanding of where those dollars are, what commodities they're living in. Ultimately, what that's going to give you is, I'll pop a screen open here. What that's going to give you is the ability to generate an accurate gross margin evaluation of your commodities, right? Your shreddables, your baled grades, if you're running a wire chopper. If you've captured all of those costs, it's going to give you a much better understanding of your cost of goods sold, which then in turn is going to give you a much better understanding of your gross margin. So what I'm here to talk about is costs, capturing those costs. And this is the part that's what's really been innovative, is actually paying for those commodities. So let's commence with the whole conversation about payables and payments. So first of all, the mantra in scrap is bought, it's not sold. When you buy something, you typically have to pay for it. And that's the thing that has changed dramatically. Payment has changed so dramatically over my 29 years in scrap metal. When I started, there was checks, there was cash, that was it. Along came the ATM, right? So you took that cash out of the hands of an operator and you put it into a machine to disperse. That was an advancement. Then came ACH and EFT payments, right? So now you could digitally pay for things, an improvement. So now we're talking about things like pay cards and right, not collecting payments, but actually loading things like reloadable pay cards, Google Pay, Apple Pay, these digital payments. Interestingly, cash is king, cash has become increasingly difficult to spend, right? I go to my ballpark and I can't spend cash at the ballpark. I go to a vendor and it's like, nope, I need a credit card or tap your phone on that thing. So the balances have really shifted. As attractive as cash is for, making payments to your suppliers, it is becoming increasingly difficult and less common to be able to use. So I'm going to break this conversation down into 2 things. First of all, when you incur a liability, when is it a payable? There's a huge difference between just having a liability and then converting that into what now becomes a payable. You're dealing with a lot of different counterparties. Like I said, we're talking about your costs not only for buying scrap metal, but for transportation, for disposal, for conversion costs. So you're dealing with these different counterparties. incurring the liability, right, when material lands at your facility, when you hire a contract hauler, incurring that liability, the path to becoming a payable is quite different depending on the counterparty you're dealing with. So I'm going to break this conversation down into two parts. A, how do I get from a liability to a payable? And B, how do I issue that payment? So the real simple is, let's start with material purchases. And I'll keep this relatively short. It's pretty commonplace. I've popped open platform. I'm going to go to our settings sector. This kind of lives in the background. When you bring material into your facility, it goes across a scale. You gross, tear, net weigh it. If it's a floor scale, a truck scale, you weigh it. You need to establish two things. You need to establish weight. You need to establish grade. That's fine and dandy. But before it becomes a payable, the other thing you need to establish is, what's the value of that material? So over here on the right-hand side of this screen, right, I've got weight, I've got grade, I need a price. That price may be an estimated price, it may be a spot price, it may be based off an index, whatever it is. It goes through, right, through a series of approval processes before it becomes a payable. Any scrap system worth its salt has this approval workflow so that you can make sure you're not paying cash for a fraudulent transaction, an overpriced transaction, right, so that you're paying what you get for it. Pretty simple. That's material. That supplier may be paid immediately. So let's pop over to our accounting sector here. Right? Every scrap company is dealing with street traffic, with walk-in trade, with casual customers. You've got a cashier. I may be paying that immediately. Gross, tear, net, grade, price, boom, issue a check, a cash. We'll talk about the other payment methods. Or it may be going through a batch payment process. But let's stop there. That's material purchases. That's the process of getting from a liability. You've taken in material. Now you've got a payable. Completely different if you're dealing with a contract hauler. So let's pull up one of my commercial accounts. It's a salvage yard. He needs his roll-off box exchanged. I've exhausted all my truck resources. I need to contract a hauler to do it. I pop over to his account. We need to perform a roll-off box exchange. I'm not going to use my internal trucking for this. I'm going to contract, let's say, Stone Trucking to do this haul. Stone Trucking in the system here, again, this is the life cycle of dealing with a hauling company. I've got a freight rate database for this origin and destination for exchanging a 20-yard roll-off. I've got a rate in the system for $99. I'm going to incur the liability. I'm going to get a bill from that contract hauler when they execute the work, if they execute it successfully, and I'm going to do, in this case, bill matching. My suppliers never send me bills. My haulers send me bills, and they're bills based off of the rates that are in the system. So that's a completely different life cycle to get from a liability that I'm about to incur to a payable. That's number two. Number three, another example of dealing with a counterparty in a completely different method. My waste operations my scrap metal operations generate waste. I need to dispose of that waste. So imagine this, another example of a different life cycle for going from liability to payment. Truck pulls up, my truck pulls up to load out a load full of residue that's going to go to a landfill. I call that transaction up, that we're hauling waste. It's headed to the county landfill, so I'm going to light weigh that truck. I'm going to lightweight that truck. I'm going to load that truck. I'm going to heavyweight that truck. I'm going to send it to the landfill. Now I've incurred a liability. I'm going to owe that landfill. I'm going to owe them for, however, not the weight that I just gauged across my scale. I'm going to owe them for the weight that they've registered across their scale. So I need to take that transaction, that liability, and I need to pop over to this section, and I need to record this, the destination weight for that scale transaction. So here's my scale ticket that I weighed out to the county landfill. Here's where I'm going to record the date it was received, the scale ticket for the receipt of it, the weight that they gauged across their scale, which may likely be different than my scale. So now I've taken that liability, I've turned it into a payable. So 3 completely different paths to get from liability: material, transportation costs, disposal costs. Again, it could be different if you're dealing with a company that's converting your raw materials into finished goods. If I'm sending material out to get, let's say, all my aluminums to a local company to toll and turn into ingots and sows, again, a completely different liability that's going to ultimately get converted into a payable. And in every case, the important thing is I want to capitalize, because these are all investments in my inventory. I'm going to capitalize those costs into my inventory value. Okay? So that was step 1. Now I've got all these payables. How do I make payments? So like I said at the beginning, one of the things that has changed dramatically over the years is the methods with which we make these payments. It used to be cash, it used to be check. Not only are cash and check risky, but they're extraordinarily costly. It costs dollars to write someone a check as opposed to pennies to do an ACH or EFT payment. I mean, we estimate making those traditional payment methods, there's a 1 to 2% cost to that. So those numbers are going to add up dramatically because they're going to add up quickly. You know, if you've got an ATM or a CDU, you're hiring the likes of a Garda or a service company to go out and load that. There's a cost to that. There's also an opportunity cost. If you've got money, right, tens of thousands of dollars sitting in a machine, that money's not making money. So there's an opportunity loss there. Also, those payments are untraceable, and I know that's the desire on the supplier side, but that's becoming less and less important. I mean, when you pay someone cash now, you've got to get their fingerprint, you've got to get their driver's license, you've got to get a picture of their face. So cash used to be a relatively untraceable method to make payments, but now, right, all those connections are there. And then the risk of fraud, mistakes, check fraud, even with positive payment, it still happens, it's still there. So those traditional methods of payment are not only risky, they're costly, and again, having cash in your wallet is less valuable than it used to be. It's harder to spend. ACH, EFT payments, absolutely the way to go. And to incentivize your suppliers to go that way, right, you can add a bonus to their payment, right? You can either disincentivize them by charging. If you want a check, you want cash, there's going to be a convenience fee. If you move to ACH or EFT payments, there's going to be a bonus that'll get added to your payment. Systems can do that automatically, kind of move them to it. And the last piece with checks, you issue a check, years later, that check never gets cashed, you've got to deal with a sheetment. And that's a pain in the neck process. So AMCS's integrated payments handles traditional methods. It handles cutting checks. It handles dealing with ATMs. It deals with, because the checks through AMCS Pay are an integrated solution, so it recognizes the status of that check and can deal seamlessly with a sheetment. But now we're moving to things like pay cards, and this is where really everything's moving. A reloadable, branded, put your logo on that pay card. It's reloadable. If your supplier loses that pay card, they can walk up to your desk, say, hey, I lost my pay card. You can call that account up, you can access that pay card, void it, take the balance that he didn't spend on that pay card, put it on a new one. Here you go, sir. So it generates loyalty. That reloadable card is every bit as good as cash. You can go to an ATM machine and draw funds out. You can go to 7-Eleven and buy that Slurpee. So it has all the advantages of cash. It also gets around, in many municipalities, it gets around the restrictions you have on cash payments, right? If there's a 3-day hold for copper or a hold for catalytic converters or insulated wire, not with digital payments. Right? In many, many cases, and again, it's not uniform, but in many cases, because it's a digital payment, it bypasses those. So that really is the future, and then you know we're headed towards Apple Pay, Google Pay, be able to load those funds on someone's phone so they walk up, right, to the register and then use that. So this slide right here, this is AMCS Pay. Like I said, it's showing you, because it's a completely integrated solution, it's showing you the status, and my mouse doesn't want to appear. Let's get on the screen. It's showing you the life cycle of that payment, right? If a supplier says, hey, you said you EFT'd me those funds, we know when we transmit it, we know when it's been received and captured at the destination bank. So because that, again, integrated solution, it follows that payment all the way through recognition of completion. We can track now, and again, keep track of how many payments we're dispersing through cash, check, EFT, reloadable pay cards. So times are changing. AMCS Pay keeps up with those changes, and really, as that landscape never stops. So a seamless integration from liability to payable to issuance of payment. Capturing all those costs gives you a real accurate cost of goods sold. It's not just what you paid for that material, what did you invest in that material to get it to a sellable finished good. So margin visibility, operational efficiency, right? Seamlessly traversing through the system and really giving you some real valuable informed decision making. So that's what I wanted to talk about today, the entire life cycle of incurring liabilities, converting it to a payable, and issuing that payment. Okay? Do you have any questions? All right, well, thank you so much for your attendance. I appreciate it.